Hi guys, so in this video I'm going to show how I converted a little Mini into this Gaslands vehicle. And obviously I couldn't help resist but put an orc in it. Just to say guys, everything I now make I will actually be selling. So I'm just going to get around to making a little shop where these things can be purchased. Well, that's if anyone wants to buy any of the stuff that I make. Anyway, back to the video. So we have to go back about 8 months actually, as that's when I actually started to make this thing. So, roll back time 8 months ago. So I started this little project about 4 weeks after I started this channel. But basically, I kind of started it, but then didn't really feel it, so I kind of put it to one side, and then only picked it back up again a few days ago. So, we start off with this nice little Mini, and this was bought from Amazon. There is a link in the description, guys, to Amazon, and anytime you click on that link and then buy something, I get a few pennies from it, but it doesn't cost you any extra. So the first thing I wanted to do is basically take it apart. And I watched a few videos at the time when I started making this. And obviously most of them sort of showed, yeah, you just drill out the bits at the bottom. And then basically the bottom can just pop off. And the main reason I was obviously doing this is because I wanted to repaint it. But obviously looking back, the fact that this was red, and well, that's kind of the colour it ends up as. So if I'd known now about orcs and obviously red making things go faster, I probably wouldn't have done any of this. I would have just kept it as it was, basically. But I say, this was quite some time ago, and I was really sort of new to everything. So yeah, all comes apart quite nicely. And as I say, I'm not even sure what colour I was intending to paint this. But it's quite funny that it started off red, and obviously I made it go back to being red. Although, obviously with the added rust bucket bit. So yeah, so obviously I'm going to get the paint off, and again, when I was looking, most places said to use acetone, and obviously that's what I'm using here. And I say this shows how much I knew or didn't know back then, because obviously I put in the top of this Mini, which is made of plastic, and as you can see, well, there was nothing left of that. So this is well before me using acetone to melt sprues into, well, ooey gooey spruey stuff. So yes, obviously getting the paint off wasn't too bad, it took a little bit of effort. Unfortunately, I couldn't find all the footage I'd shot when I did this first bit. So let's fast forward back to today. So the footage I couldn't actually find basically showed me gluing on these little plastic rims and then covering it in some air drying clay, just to give it some nice big wheel arches. I had also modified a couple of orcs to sit inside it, but unfortunately I could only find one of them, and that was this guy. I was going to have one sitting down driving, and then this guy's obviously standing up with shooters. But I can't find the other guy, so we'll just have the one guy in this. So yeah, I pulled out all my little bits and pieces from my little bits box of Warhammer sort of stuff. Yeah, to put some bits on. Obviously, as it's a Gaslands vehicle, I think it containing extra gas to see it through in all the desert terrain and all that is very much needed. As this is quite a small vehicle, I don't really want to overpower it with lots of bits. But I think a couple of like little sort of engine blocks coming up from the from the engine area would be pretty cool. I'm going to stick a couple of weapons on here, but again not too much because it is quite small. So yeah, a few bits here and there. One thing I do like the idea of, obviously like Mad Max, they always have something stuck on their front, or someone stuck on the front of their bonnet. So yeah, I think this little grot holding some bullets would be perfect. I've also put some wire mesh over the back windows and a few little orky things on there. I'm using this little wooden disc for the base, as it's a great little size. And for the first time I'm going to have a go using this cork board. Again, this is something I brought ages and ages ago. Never quite got around to using. So I thought this would be the perfect time to have a go using this. Just to see, well, see how it works basically. So my plan is I want it to be a rocky base, but this angled bit at the top, just so I can have the vehicle looking like it's going to fly off. Just to add a bit more texture to the base, I'm going to add on some of these little stones that I've used in the past. I think these basically, I've got a huge big bag of these, and they're meant to be for a fish tank, which is why I think they were so cheap. So the bag I've got is, well, it's humongous, and it's only about a £5. So I'll have these little stones, well, for as long as this channel's going, I reckon. But it's certainly handy to use here and there, and like in this case, they do add a bit more texture. Yeah, so especially this is going to be a stony base. So I'll have some big stones and obviously loads of little stones. And there we go, I'm pretty pleased with how that's looking. So basically, again, simple little painting on this. I'm just going to paint it grey Then I'll eventually paint it with some black wash, and then I'll go over it with some white, just to do some highlights. And I think the final result looks pretty stone looking, and yeah, nice and simple. Especially if I can do it, then obviously anyone can do this kind of look. But yeah, very effective. And then onto my little orc. I'm going to paint him basically how I paint all my orcs now, which is basically using Citadel colour, the contrast paint, and I use the actual Plague Bearer flesh. Just because I really like the lighter green on my orcs. So yeah, I keep them nice and simple and basically use contrast paints wherever possible, really. So getting back to the car, obviously I primed it with some red primer. But again, if I'd known about orcs and obviously the colours meaning different things, and knowing that red makes things go faster, I would have obviously kept it with the original red, just because obviously it's a nice shiny red, and basically would have saved a lot of time on repainting. But hey ho, we live and learn. And I say this thing I kind of started quite some time ago. Really not too sure why I didn't complete it, but say for whatever reason, wasn't feeling it, so I went on to other projects, which does kind of sound like me really. I like to start things, and if I don't feel like I'm really enjoying it, well, yeah, I'll stop and do something else. So I'm having to repaint the wheels as well, mainly because they were glued into place. Again, if I'd known more about what I was going to be doing, I would have taken these off completely and then basically put them back on at the end of the build. But as I say, we all kind of like learning this kind of like little hobby. So I've been doing it now for about 9 months, this channel, and I've definitely learned quite a bit in that time, which is good, yeah. As it is an orc vehicle, I like to try and get the checkered pattern in somewhere, and I find the easiest and best way of doing this is to basically use a fine marker, just to sort of like mark out the lines where the squares are obviously going to be, and then once that's all done, I've got some acrylic pens, which are pretty awesome, and I kind of use those just to sort of fill the bits in, just because I find it's a lot easier to do when it's something fine and obviously fiddly, rather than trying to paint these little squares. Yeah, it's much easier using the pen where possible. And there we go, I've got all the base sort of colours on now, it's looking pretty good. So obviously it needs to be a lot dirtier looking than this. So as usual, good old black wash. Plaster this stuff all over. And then dab bits off here and there with a cloth. And then we're ready to turn this into a little rust bucket. So as usual, I've got using my good old grout and a bit of brown paint. Mix them together, just as this will add some nice texture when it dries, just to help it look more like rust. As this is a really small vehicle, it's a bit difficult to use the method I normally use now, which is using a bit of a sponge to obviously dab this stuff on. So in this case, I'm just using a small brush and basically just sort of dabbing it here and there, making sure I get some nice lumpy bits on my brush though. Just to say guys, there will eventually be a link somewhere in the description as to where you can buy these bits and pieces that I do make, as again that'll help support the channel, and basically I can then buy more materials to make more bits and pieces. Another way to support the channel is obviously to become a patron, and by becoming a patron you obviously get exclusive access to behind the scenes videos and basically images of what I'm currently working on before it comes to YouTube. So go check that out too guys. Okay, so back to the build. Obviously it's pretty much done now. The final thing I like to do with any of these kind of like metal sort of things is go over with a light dry brushing of silver, just as this catches all the edges. Makes it look like it's got some sort of scratch marks, scrape marks. And yeah, I think this also helps the rust bits as well, because obviously some of it hits the rust just so there's a bit of sort of metal showing through. So yeah, final step, bit of dry brushing just to finish it all off really. And there we go. Okay, roll glamour shots. I hope you enjoyed this little Gaslands mini conversion, guys. And if you want to see more of these kind of conversions, let me know in the comments, as I really enjoyed this, and yeah, wouldn't mind doing some more. Maybe with different figures other than orcs. So let me know what kind of cars you'd like to see me convert, and who'd want to be driving it. And as always, I want to say a big thank you to all my patrons for helping support the channel, as it means I can keep on making more and more videos. If you are new here and like what I do, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell, as I do produce videos every week. There is another video on the screen, guys. Why don't you give that a click to see more of what I do? Okay guys, that's it. Bye for now.